So hello and welcome to the 40th episode of the Spotlight Podcast, the unofficial podcast for Century 21 sales representatives in Canada, where we discuss the hot topics and important news in the real estate industry. So I'm your host, Linas Kilius, and with me, as always, is Eryn Richardson. How's it going, Eryn?
Good, Linas. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. 40 episodes. We've been doing this for a while, turns out. A little bit over a year,
40.
actually. Yeah, I know. Big milestone.
Yeah.
So Eryn is a broker and general manager with Century 21 Heritage Group. Eryn has an extensive background in online marketing, technology, and customer service, and the head of business development at the real estate marketing company Homeania. So the real estate market over the past couple of months has been anything but predictable. We've seen drastic price swings in areas as there have been large shifts in supply and demand, especially in many pockets in the Greater Toronto Area. Through the Spotlight marketing program, we've actually also seen a record number of price changes on listings over the past month. Just yesterday, Eryn and I were discussing a listing that came to the market with one price, had a price reduction 1 week later, and then had a price increase a couple weeks after that. So the market can be so price volatile that it can be difficult as a real estate agent to assess the value of a home. When home prices are in constant motion, past sales data from comparable properties may be outdated even as short as within a couple of weeks. So how can you confidently price a home in a market like this? So Eryn, you've got a home going up for sale in a market where prices are in flux. Where do you start when assessing the value of the home, given the way that the market is today?
It's tough. Doing a proper market analysis in any market is obviously very important, but even more important now. Being able to justify the price of the home and doing a proper and careful analysis with adjustments and taking that sort of stuff into account is very, very, very important to be able to justify it to the homeowners. Because when you're going to come up with a price that, let's say your neighbor house sold for $1.2 million, and you're putting this house up and you know that it's a comparable home, but you're going to be saying, listen, 1.15 is a marketable price on this house. They're going to be disappointed, and they may not want to go with you as a real estate agent if they feel you're undervaluing the home. So you really have to be careful and have the information that's backing you up and be able to talk about value and why you've come up with that price.
So is that just the best way, is just to try and gain the confidence of the client and let them understand that the home may not be as valuable as they expect?
Well, yeah, they have to understand what's happening in the market. On a downwards market, you can think of a graph as the graph goes up and down. On a downwards market, today's price is not tomorrow's sale. Today's value, what that just sold for, is on a decline. So in 2 weeks, when you get up and market that property, and get the property on the market, whether it's 2, 3 weeks, or even tomorrow, the market is heading downwards. And when it heads downwards, people are stuck at a price in their mind that they think they need or want, and the market will never hit that price, which means you're just going to be up forever. You have to be ahead of the market right now.
Yeah, it sounds like it's tough, especially if you're competing against agents for clients when they're, say, valuing the house at a higher point. Then the client might say, well, why is he saying it's so much more? And then you've got that that job, I guess, to explain why it isn't that way. And like you said, they might have that price in their head and say, well, that agent is telling us a price that he thinks he can get for this property, which is higher than the agent that that you're saying. So I guess that's a tough thing to compete against sometimes. Yeah,
and the worst thing you want is your reputation in the market to have homes that don't sell. But at the same time, you also know that inventory creates buyers, and getting an inventory on the market is very important. So you have to look deep inside your realtor heart and decide which way you really want to go in things. And I've always promoted, we're here to sell homes. We're not here to put homes on the market. And we're not a listing agents that are just there for another listing. We're there to sell their home. So explain that to your seller and have some confidence behind you, and what's going on in the market, and you have to be able to really get that across to them of what is happening, so they can understand, and they'll respect you for it. And when you go away from that listing presentation, hopefully they make the decision based on some careful consideration rather than just who has the highest price.
So let's say you get the client, you list their home, and you don't get it right, because you might list it what it seems to be the market value, but then the market may shift within a week or two, right, of doing that initial assessment. So how do you temper the expectations of the clients, or how do you approach that situation to tell them, hey, listen, we really need to reduce the list value of your home, because that can never be an easy conversation to have.
Yeah, price reductions are difficult, but you should always be working on them, because if a house didn't sell after your marketing in the first 2 weeks, it's going to take 2 or more months in order to really, I guess, convince somebody sometimes, or have them have convinced after frustration and they're upset with you and you might lose the listing. So you have to be active and proactive yourself to get a price reduction fairly quickly. As long as you involve your sellers with the process and manage their expectations up front, you can then have a plan B, and the fact is you have to really look at their motivations too. If they're not motivated to sell and they need to make a price change, you're going to run into some problems there. You may have to suspend, hold off, relist. There's different options, but you should look at all the options and make sure they're involved in that decision.
Yeah, and those are never words that a seller likes to hear, right?
Yeah.
Typically, I mean, what we see a lot of too, being on the marketing side of things, is that whenever there are price reductions or relists required, a lot of agents will start pointing fingers in really strange directions almost sometimes to try and justify the reason the price reductions are required. It might be, like the photos taken outside where, it was raining that day, or maybe there was some strange angle in the family room. There seems to be like a million reasons that an agent might start pointing fingers. Is that a good thing to do?
You have a difficult having a marketing company is pretty difficult through this time, because that's exactly what happens. The price, the home was established, they put it on the market, they did a great job marketing it and everything, and then the seller's going, well, it can't be the price. I mean, maybe it was the fact the pictures are, an off shade, or maybe you didn't get it out like a. We've had sellers come to the agent and said, listen, I need you to call around all the big players in town and make cold calls to the agents to try and get them to sell this house. I need you to do some work for me here. And then, they don't have they have a valid point. They want you working hard for them at this point in time. But there is some, again, expectations that maybe weren't managed from the beginning. You have to let them know everything you're doing to market the property and the value you're giving them, and say, listen, short of a price adjustment, there's nothing else we can do other than remove it from the market or do a price adjustment. And that's a tough one. And there's a lot of tricks. Take the client out to see the houses, pretend you're a buyer, and go out and view some homes. Sometimes that can backfire, because they say, oh, my house is the best on the market right now, and say, well, maybe there just isn't any buyers out there right now. Do some analysis statistically. 450 houses on the market, only 2 sold last week. That means how many weeks, divide that 2 by 450. That's how many weeks it's going to take to sell all the inventory. So, it's a tough market when things aren't moving. You have lots of listings.
So come up with a reason and try and avoid excuses, I guess.
Oh, but yeah, come up with a plan. You have the answer. We knew this might happen, but this is what we have to do, and this is what we're going to do to try and get out there, get more creative with online advertising and pay-per-click advertising. I mean, show that you're doing everything you can, but let them also know that in the end, the buyers out there are going to buy the best value that's on the market. And if there's only 2 buyers, you better be the best value on the market.
So what if you're on the other side of the coin? What if you're an agent representing a buyer? You're looking at properties too. Is there anything you can do in this volatile market to potentially, take advantage of these rapid price fluctuations?
Well, sure. I mean, anytime where there's a ton of listings on the market, people start talking. Maybe it's a buyer's market now. Buyer's market, is debatable at this point in time in our market. We have lots of listings, but the price is still up there. A lot of listings are still at the price they thought it was going to be, maybe a month ago or whatnot. So you should be looking for people that are kind of desperate. And I know that's, it's. I hate to say we're taking advantage of the seller or anything like that, but if they've bought and they've purchased, they're scared. They have to sell. So some lowballing and some, opportunity to take advantage of those situations is definitely there for the buying market, for sure.
All right. Well, how about if you're looking to purchase an investment, say like either as a flip or rental or otherwise? Like when we're talking about evaluating homes, should you be looking at the value of homes any different in those kinds of situations as well?
Yeah, it's tough right now for investors in our market. It seems that they've completely disappeared. They're off the face of the earth right now, and that's sort of causing some of the issues we have because they're waiting. And as an investor on a downward swing, if your stock is going down in value, do you really want to be purchasing? Where's the bottom? You want to purchase at the bottom and then make some money on an upswing, and that's what happened in the spring, but where they made money on an upswing. But now that's on a downswing, they're saying, "Oh, I'm not going to buy a house, and by the time I'm closed, I already lost 20%." So all the investors are sort of waiting this waiting game. What'll end up happening is, we'll get through the inventory throughout the summer and whatnot, and there'll be a little bit of a spike there in September, and you'll see the investors try and get back in because when you're investing, depending on the type of investment, I don't think it's a bad thing ever to be in the real estate market. Markets always go up, and in the end, you're going to win out if it's a long-term gain. But if you're doing a fix and flip right now, it's a tough one for them. I think if I was a fix and flip right now, I might be holding off and waiting for either the bottom to fall out or an upward swing, and then buy into the upward swing.
I always feel like fix and flipping is kind of like day trading on the stock market, whereas, maybe if you've got a rental property, it's more like you're in for the long haul too, right? So.
I had a guy call me the other day, and he says, "Now, Eryn, I'm ready now to do these flips." I'm like, "Where were you 2 months ago?" Because I told him the stories back in February where people were purchasing a property and making 30%, 40% in a month, right? And they didn't do anything with the house. You didn't even have to fix it. There was no fixing. It was just flipping. Just buy it and sell it 2 months later, and they were making 30%. So, but now I was giving some advice to, maybe sit tight and wait for a little bit. But, and I'm here to sell homes, but I'm also here to build a business. I'm here to build a rapport with my clients and all the rest of it. So, and in this case, it was a friend of mine, and I just gave him some advice, maybe just to hold off and see what happens over the next little bit, like everyone else seems to be doing. So, and then you start looking at an upward swing market in terms of fixing and flipping.
So, I mean, you and all the other real estate agents are in the business of selling homes. Like, is that good advice to give? Like, if you've got potentially a hot buyer coming in,
yeah,
it must be tough to exercise restraint if you think that he shouldn't be buying right now for whatever reason, to tell them that specific advice too, because that means you're not going to get that buyer or that seller, right?
Well, I own a business, and all the real estate agents have to realize that they own a business. And do you want to have the reputation of somebody that's selling houses for the sake of selling houses, or do you want to have the reputation of an agent that's giving good advice, sound advice to investors that they're going to refer you more people because you're making them money and you're telling them when to hold and when to purchase? And so good advice is always the way to go on that situation. You just don't want the next quick sale.
Let's talk about appraisals, because the bank and MPAC will appraise your home. And after you purchase the home, you might look at the purchase price, and you might look at the appraised price, and there might be quite a discrepancy there. Like, what's going on there? Why are they different, and does it matter?
Yeah. So when it comes to establishing a market value for let's say any piece of real estate, there are different ways that you're going to establish value. When we were taught taking the courses, there's 3 main ways, and I know some of them are broken up into subcategories, but in a general sense, you have a comparable approach, which we do in real estate, because we say, well, the one sold that was very comparable 2 doors down for this price, therefore your home is going to be valued at that price. And real estate appraisers will typically use the comparable approach almost 98% of the time, because that's how you value a home's value, is what a buyer will pay on the open market. But then you get an appraisal done, let's say by your insurance company, and your appraisal comes in, at $850,000, and you bought the house for $600,000, and you're saying, well, why did you, say my house is worth $850,000? Well, that's the cost approach, and that's the cost to replace your home. I had an old home. This is exactly what happened. I bought a home. It was 3,000 square feet, a big home with an addition, and it was an old home, old century home. And I bought it for way back then for $420,000 or $430,000 or something like that. And the cost to replace was $850,000. And so, they're looking at the cost approach. How much would it cost to replace that piece of property? And that's another type of appraisal. And then there's the income approach, which is more of like an investment type scenario, where they look at things like cap rate and how much income is this property making you based on rental rates and all the rest of it, and what's your return in terms of your cap rate. So there are different, and there are different ways. That's where there's sort of the income approach or the investment approach can be broken down to subcategories depending on the investment. But that's why you're going to see different types of appraisals done, but also to answer your question about what the different types are in terms of like MPAC is going to, they're both doing comparable approaches. Why is it different? Well, banks want it to come in a little lower so they minimize their risk. MPAC wants it maybe in some cases a little higher because they want to make more taxes on you, but we all seem to have lower impact ratings right now. So they do it a little differently, and they'll assess what it was, what it is, let's say today, and then have a 5-year incremental. So they'll take off 5 years of value and just, make you pay the amount that it was it seems like 5 years ago, and then bring you up to the value of today in 5 years. So there's different ways that they do it as well.
Is this something that you prep, say, like first-time home buyers on when they're purchasing a home, because they may not realize that this might happen, where they get drastically different appraised values?
Well, and right now it's the reason. I mean, it's a good topic to talk about right now because appraisals are coming back with kind of crazy values, and some of them are lower than what we expect, because if somebody's going to purchase a property, let's say a month ago, looking to close next month, and an appraisal comes through, and we've kind of dropped in value right now, and the appraisers know this. So if you bought it for 1.3, they're only valuing it at 1.2. So the buyer comes back to the agent and goes, "Oh, we overpaid." Well, no, we bought it in the market that we were in, and we paid what we did because that was the market value back then. Market has shifted, and they'll shift up and down. Don't worry about it. But the appraisal will come in a little bit lower because the banks want to minimize their liability and risk in terms of putting a mortgage on the property.
Yeah, there's always an answer, and I guess as the real estate agent, you've always got to have that answer ready for your client, right?
Yeah, and sometimes, don't let them ask the question. Talk to them before the appraisal's done and say, just so you know, appraiser's going through, but don't be surprised if it comes a little lower than what we purchased it for this reason.
Tempering expectations, very important. Is there anything else you want to say about this topic before we wrap up the show, Eryn?
Geez. Yeah, I guess going back to the original comment I made at the beginning, I don't see agents doing a diligent enough job doing a proper appraisal enough. They'll come in and they'll print off comparables, put them in front of the seller and say, your house kind of sits in here, rather than statistically showing them that. And when you're doing a proper market analysis, what appraisers do, and is what we should do, is take everything into account. If you're selling a 2-story home with 2-car garage and 4 bedrooms, you're comparing it to other homes that are 2-car garage, 2-story, and comparable, but sometimes things aren't identical. So this one was updated. How much are you going to put in for an adjustment based on an upgraded kitchen? If you were a buyer, I'd buy this home for $60,000 more because of the kitchen. So you do an adjustment on your property by taking away $60,000 on the other one. And that's how adjustments are done. And when you're done all your adjustments for all your comparables, you actually get a really good statistical analysis of saying, yeah, that sits in exactly where I expected that house to sit in. And what it shows to the seller is that you've put some really good thought into your appraisal. And that way they're not going to question you as much, and they're going to see you as a professional.
Yeah, well, doing the work and showing that you've done the work and being thorough is always a good thing in any industry. So I guess using that to raise the client's thought of you as a professional is always important. Okay, so I think we'll wrap the show up here then. So if you like the show, subscribe to our show on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts online. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on those sites, because it really does help. You can watch us from past shows at spotlight.century21.ca/podcast. If you need to reach us, you can email us anytime at podcast@homeania.com. That's podcast at HOM as in Mary, EAN as in Nancy, IA.com. This podcast was brought to you by the Spotlight Marketing Program, an exclusive marketing package available only to Century 21 agents in Canada. Spotlight provides agents with a comprehensive internet marketing strategy for their listings. We provide high-quality HDR photography, stunning HD video tours, a cutting-edge responsive website, and an extensive advertising system that will help sell your listings faster, sell them for more money, impress your clients, and generate leads. Find out why so many agents are using Spotlight by visiting spotlight.century21.ca today. Thanks again, Eryn. Thanks everyone for
Linus.
listening.
Take care.
Have a great week.